everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC. It is time to preview another Knicks matchup 2 days after they took on Jimmy Butler's old team in a thrilling overtime victory against the Miami Heat down across from South Beach. As people keep correcting me, it's not in South Beach, it's across from South Beach against the Miami Heat. They now take on Jimmy Butler's new team, a team that is 8-2, the Golden State Warriors, since trading for Jimmy Butler, a team that is 33-28. And with the news out of Dallas this morning, baby, distancing themselves from the bottom of the play-in in the not-too-distant future, but a team that comes in here completely rejuvenated after a trade deadline trade for the six-time All-Star and a guy in Jimmy Butler that has given Knicks fans pains in a while. I'm going to bring my guest on in just a second, but I haven't done one of my profiles in a little bit. So the Golden State Warriors, as I mentioned, are 33-28, 8-2 since Jimmy Butler. They're 16th in offensive rating, but they're 4th since trading for Jimmy Butler. They're 8th in defense and 3rd since trading for Jimmy Butler. They're 12th in net rating, but 3rd since trading for Jimmy Butler. You sense a theme here. 1st and 2nd in assist percentage and assisted turnovers. Effective field goal percentage, they're only 21st, but that's up from 23rd since trading for Jimmy Butler, which is their 15th since trading for Jimmy Butler and 23rd before that. The true shooting is up to 22nd, but it's 12th since trading for Jimmy Butler, so it is an improvement. And probably the biggest thing, before the Jimmy Butler trade, this team was scoring 29. They were 29th in percentage of their points that came off of free throws. That is up to 25th because they are 6th since trading for Jimmy Butler. This is a team playing a completely different way, and the Knicks will have their hands full coming into this matchup. And joining me to talk about it from the Light Years podcast, the legend himself, Sam Esfandiari. Sam, welcome to the Knicks Film School. Welcome back to Knicks Film School, sir.
What's up, Andrew? I think what you're saying is Jimmy Butler's the MVP, correct?
This speaks to a very valuable player that you traded for, which,
yeah.
I mean, look, I talked to you about this morning a little bit in the DMs, that there's this thing that me and my buddy Alex from Knicks Fan TV try to avoid, where we don't book the same guest and then go back to back on their interviews with them. So I heard your conversation with Alex about what it was like to trade for Jimmy, that you wanted for them, even when the Warriors got off to their hot start, you were still like, hey, let's trade for Jimmy Butler. Let's trade for a superstar because Andrew Wiggins is probably not who you want as your second best option unless Steph Curry was still in his prime, correct, like a couple years ago. So what I will start here in saying is a different version of a follow-up question. And it's basically like, expectations when the trade happened are one thing, but in your wildest of expectations, has it gone about as perfect as it possibly could have gone since trading for Jimmy?
Through 10 games, I don't think you can ask for more. Like, I can get into the nuts and bolts of what's working, what isn't working. That might be like a precursor for bumpy roads and that sort of thing. But on face value, like, they went from a team that I was concerned was going to miss the play-in. Like, they just looked like Steph looked defeated. He looked like, we kept hearing reports about knee tendonitis. I haven't heard about knee tendonitis since the Jimmy trade. I'll put it that way.
He's funny how that went away all of a sudden.
Exactly. Yeah. He's been reborn, and Draymond has been reborn since this trade's gone down. The one stat you didn't mention, since the trades happened, Steph is averaging 29.5 points, 6.6 assists. He's shooting 51% from the field, 42% from three. He is shooting at like MVP Steph. Like he's playing at that level. And I know so much of the conversation in the early part of the season was, is he lost a step? Are we starting to see the decline? And it looked that way because, he wasn't scoring at the frequency or efficiency we're used to seeing Steph. Like 29 points, 30 points, high efficiency. That's kind of what we're used to with him, right? In the beginning of the season, he was, scoring like 22 to 23 points per game, more volume than efficient. It just wasn't very Steph Curry-like. So more than anything, I feel like getting someone who is a known star, who has proven he can play in big games, it was like that jolt of adrenaline like Steph and Draymond needed to kind of go back and play to level they did. And then for the younger guys, which is most of the rotation outside of the three kind of established names, it really made the game easier for them, and it took a lot of pressure off of the Moses Moody, the Brandon Pajemski. Like, these are young players who have promising futures, but you're probably asking a little too much of them prior to this trade.
Moody and Pods are the other two in the new starting five, right? It's Draymond, Jimmy Butler, Steph, Moody, and Pods, right?
Yeah, unless there's some weird, someone comes down with an illness or a random injury, I would expect that to be tonight's starting lineup.
So let's just go over some lineup data, because I'd like you to explain something to me, if possible, because that 5-man unit in just 155 possessions so far has a net rating or a differential, according to Cleaning Glass, of plus 18.7. However, and this is more my curiosity about how it relates to the game tonight, this isn't the most efficient of starting fives, and it hasn't been the most efficient of teams since then. I think of the Warriors as like a high effective field goal percentage, high true shooting percentage. The prime version of this team is maximizing the first shot. This is a team that over this stretch since trading for Jimmy, those possessions that I talked about, that starting five is just a 48.6 effective field goal percentage, which is the 8th percentile, and overall it's just the 51 effective field goal percentage, which is 18th percentile. However, turnover percentage, we talked about their first since trading for Jimmy. They're just not turning the ball over. And then offensive rebounding, a Tom Thibodeau staple. This team is getting multiple possessions, it looks like, when they have a chance. They're getting as many shots at the rim as possible. So if you could make sense of that, or Chris, I know that the defense has been gangbusters since the trade. But if you could personally, give us some perspective as to how it's worked, am I reading that right? That this isn't a team that's that efficient, but it's absolutely
you are correct. People think 3-point shooting and efficiency with the Warriors, those are true for Steph Curry. They have not been true for anyone else on the roster, other than Quentin Post, who's been fun little story for the team. Since they've got Jimmy, they've actually generated really good shots. It's been a staple over the last 10 games. Wide open threes, brick. Wide open threes, brick. You can't really be mad at the shots they're generating. They're just not hitting them. Now, it does beg the question, do they just not have good enough shooters, or is this just a funk of the season? And it's probably a little bit of both. Like, Moses Moody is shooting 33% from three since they got Jimmy Butler. He's not Klay Thompson, but he is a 40% 3-point shooter. He's a guy who, if his feet are set, he should make it. Pajemski's been in a horrendous shooting slump from three since they've got Jimmy. I think he's at 26%. Draymond and Jimmy aren't hitting threes at all. So it really comes down to the 3-point line has not been paying dividends for them. If you look through the entire team, it really is like Steph and Quentin Post and everyone else shooting below league average from three at this point. But to your point, the way they've counteracted it and the reason that they've been generating wins is since they've got Jimmy, they've turned into a low turnover team. And a lot of that is just, Jimmy's a more deliberate, slow it down type of player. He doesn't turn the ball over. He ISOs, he gets the ball in the post. Things we'd never see with Warriors teams prior, but much needed ingredient for them just to kind of stabilize and not be that team who's just running up and down and chucking threes, right? So by virtue of not turning it over, they're generating, just more shots. We're not seeing those 25 turnover games where the opposing team has 20 more attempts than them, right?
Right.
And then the second thing that Jimmy's done is, he's one of the best off-ball defenders in the league. So the combination of him and Draymond creating a bunch of turnovers, like steals, blocks, that sort of thing, and Draymond at the 5 helps you push the pace. They're scoring a lot in transition, so they're making up for the fact that maybe the half-court shooting isn't good, but if they get stops, if they force turnovers and run, they can make up for it in transition. So that's been the story of them over the first 10 games. You hope at some point the shooting comes around, but it hasn't mattered to date. I think it will matter once the competition starts getting better, because that's been the other story. They've had kind of a soft schedule. these first 10 games.
To your point about the defense, first of all, again, this is the numbers according to Cleaning the Glass. That's starting 5, 98th percentile, and 91.3 the offensive rating allowed over that stretch. I guess a defensive rating is what we would call that. The transition numbers stand out too. That they're running a bit more. They're really playing small, so I don't know how much Looney will. Well, that's actually the curiosity as we pivot into this game, because this screams to me, if I'm the Knicks and if I'm trying to get in the head of Tom Thibodeau, you lean into an OG Anunoby at the 5 lineup and maybe go him, Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, Mikal Bridges, and Jalen Brunson in moments where, say, Karl Anthony Towns gets in foul trouble, or is he even playing? That's the thing. He's questionable for tonight with personal reasons. So say the nightmare scenario that Cat doesn't play tonight, I would assume that he starts Precious Achiuwa at center, and then potentially goes to Mitchell Robinson for extended minutes, even though he's still working his way back into game shape. This would be a lineup or a game to lean into some small ball, but this doesn't profile as a team that takes advantage of you the way normal small ball teams take advantage of you. Transition aside, this isn't a team that's going to kill you with the 3-point efficiency. As you pointed out, you tweeted out this stat earlier today. Steph Curry is hitting his threes, but the rest of the starting lineup is 39 of 145 from 3 since the trade was made, which is good for 26.9%. So I did want to ask you about the free throws too, and how much Jimmy has increased that frequency as well. Is this also a team that's low turnover, multiple possession, and they're getting to the line more?
Yeah, particularly his first 6 or 7 games, I feel like Jimmy came with a point to prove. He must have been averaging 10 free throw attempts a game. The last few, he's kind of settled into, I guess, what Miami would call regular season Jimmy, where it's not that he's playing poorly, it's that he's not asserting himself as much. So there's a few games in there where it's like, I don't know, he must have had like 10 total points, and he moved the ball well, played good defense, but like he wasn't, he was kind of doing his Draymond Green, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's easy to be that when Steph has 55 or whatever he had against the Magic, though. So you can understand it in that situation, right?
But it has been kind of like, from a big picture perspective, that it has been nice for them to have the ability to go to Jimmy in the post, let Jimmy kind of grift his way to the free throw line here and there, just like use his strength. He's a completely different style of player from what we've been used to of the Warriors. He's more of a physical, head down to the rim kind of guy than what the Warriors are. And that has been super useful for them because, Steph's great. Steph's an all-timer. That's not his game. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's not his game at all. And it is nice sometimes when you're going through a scoring drought or teams are double, triple teaming Steph to just like be like, throw it to Jimmy, let him get to the free throw line, slow the game down, just generate some easy offense that way. And that's been a big part of kind of stabilizing them, because before the trade, their offense was just pure variance. Everyone's hitting shots. It's great. And then they go through these 5-minute spells where no one's hitting shots, and they really didn't have the ability to generate anything other than threes. So you're just riding the roller coaster.
Well, that's why looking at the before and after of the February 6th stats and splits for the Warriors, this is a 19th ranked offense in the sport, which is just not something you expect from a Steph Curry team. And it's trending the complete opposite direction, as I read at the top. Before I get into the specifics of this matchup, my last question, big picture for the Warriors. Like, what's the new ceiling? Like, what are you thinking? It's a 10-game sample, but you're obviously seeing some process be put in place. Like, are you thinking just we'll see how it goes? We've got two All-Stars, 1 Hall of Famer. We'll see what Jimmy Butler is, but like, are you starting to think about how high the ceiling could potentially be for this season now?
I do think the West is wide open. I know OKC is destroying everyone, like just the numbers. They're going to win, 65 games, something crazy like that.
Yeah.
They're a really young team, and there's some exploitable flaws. So I do think the West is wide open, and they have a puncher's chance, which I would not have said prior. I think the way I look at it more than anything, I think this team will avoid the play-in now, and I think that's the stated goal. And then we'll see what happens in the playoffs. If I had to put money on it, I'd say the Lakers look scarier for the same reason, where they made their midseason trade and they're kind of like a new team. But it's the same kind of logic of veteran team. You don't really want to see them in a playoff series, to be honest. And all the teams at the top with better records, none of them have done it in the playoffs before. So
right.
you want, like, is this the year Houston's going to grow up or OKC's going to grow up, or are they going to fall to the veteran team who knows how to play in the playoffs? So I kind of like where the Warriors are at post Jimmy trade. And I think it's funny. I think the East, I can't see anyone other than the top three getting out of the East. I could see anyone in the top 8 in the West getting out. I wouldn't bet anyone, but like I could totally see it.
I think you and I both would. This is a very small nitpick. You meant top 6, right? Like you don't see a Clipper version, or do you actually see a Clipper version, or a Wolves version, or a Kings version?
Not the Kings. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Clippers.
It's a nitpick. It's a nitpick. I understood what you meant.
The Clippers are still to be determined. It really depends how good Kawhi can get to. If
Mm-hmm.
Kawhi can get closer to what he was, then I'm not writing them off.
Okay.
If he can't, then they're a tough out, but they are just a tough out, right? So to your point, maybe it is top 6, but I do think there's more plausible scenarios of who gets out of the West than the East. The East, I just can't see anyone other than Cleveland, Boston, or New York getting out. Like, I would be shocked if we get to the finals and it's like the Orlando Magic, or the Pacers, or something like that.
It's like Milwaukee's the one that if you're like, oh, Giannis
actually,
went
I
nuts.
I take it back.
But like, even
so four teams.
If Milwaukee went nuts, you'd understand it. But no one's projecting that what's probably going to be a 5th or a 6th seed out of the East and what they are. To your point about what the West has started to shape up as, it's in the top 6. There are these 3 veteran-led teams who have playoff experience, have all-time greats on them. And there are these 3 very young teams that one is like not battle tested at all in the Rockets. One has a chance to be the youngest team to win a title in the Thunder. Like that stat that keeps getting thrown at me, that on aggregate, they would be the youngest team ever to win a title, which actually bodes well for teams playing against them. And then this Memphis team that I'm curious if that would be the team you're looking at. It's like, hey, give me Memphis in the first round and we're cooking. Knowing the history against the Grizzlies in the past.
I mean, I would say, if you were to say who would I consider the most advantageous matchup for the Warriors? No, number 1 would be Houston. Number 2 would be Memphis. I'd probably say OKC number 3. Honestly, I'd still rather face OKC than Denver or the Lakers.
Really,
like Jokic is well, he's a problem for everyone. But particularly with the small ball Warriors, like that doesn't look particularly good. And then just the Lakers, I mean, unfair for them to get Luka, and I feel terrible for the Mavs. Yeah. But like, I don't want to see any part of that either. Or at least if you ask me, would I rather face that or OKC? I'd rather take my chances with the 65 win OKC Thunder, even they're great and all, but I need to see it.
Listen, in all of the numbers that I split up that were like post trade deadline, and that's basically where the split starts, that are very advantageous to the Warriors and show a clear impact from Jimmy Butler. All of those numbers also show a clear impact of Luka Doncic. Like they're all favorable to the Lakers too. So it's why it's not like this whole conversation we just had isn't crazy, that you could say, give me the Thunder over the Luka LeBron Lakers or Jokic and what the Nuggets have been for 2 months.
And to your point, maybe that's the biggest difference. Two teams who've won titles in the West made like actual star edition. Like they're different teams. They're just not the same team they were pre-deadline. Whereas the East, it's like, I mean, teams made moves, but it wasn't like you added
DeAndre Hunter's the biggest one. Yeah,
exactly.
It's
exactly.
Like
you're not coming in here adding like a 6-time All-Star to the Celtics or something like that.
It's why I've joked
Kyle
about
Kuzma
this.
is the biggest move,
right? Like that's the big move. Like let's go get the best player on the 6-50 Wizards and make him our 7th man. It's why I've joked about this for the last couple of weeks, but I'm a big believer not just in like the playoffs adding drama and like that's where your sport makes its bones, but like the matchups matter too. It's how rivalries are built. And it Adam Silver, if you have any David Stern left in you, make sure that we don't get Lakers Warriors in the first round, because there's a world where the Lakers get the 2 seed, the Warriors play Memphis, potentially upset them in the first round, and we get Steph LeBron, which I know is a rivalry that you're looking forward to another chapter of, but like a new version of it with the Jimmy Butler and Luka edition, with a chance to go play OKC in the conference finals. It's why that roadmap is so fascinating to me. However, it starts in Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night. Of course, that's where all good things start, at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks sit here at 4th in offense, top 10 in net rating. They've kind of locked themselves into the 3 seed unless the Celtics decide to come back down to planet Earth. The Knicks are 40-20. This is the best team they've had record-wise since 1997. And you'd never know it by some of the vibes in the fan base who just complained about the fact that they're 0-7 against the top 3 teams in the sport. So I will ask you first about this matchup in particular. What's the thing about the Knicks that scares you the most? What's the thing that you're looking at coming into this game? It's like, oh, I don't think the Warriors will do well against this.
Brunson. Jalen Brunson.
Fair answer. Okay, whole conversation over. Jalen Brunson. There you go.
Warriors have the 3rd best defense statistically since they got Jimmy Butler. Their one weakness is guarding the ball, guarding point of attack.
Point of attack, yeah.
Their best point of attack defender, GP2, he's a clunky fit offensively, so it's hard to really even play him more than 15 to 20 minutes, even though he's been playing phenomenal ball. But he got hurt last night. I really don't expect him to play tonight. So with him off of there, it's like I would expect Podziemski to guard him. Fun fact, Podziemski always mentions Jalen Brunson as players he tries to steal game from the most. He's a lefty. He's like Brunson. He's like, Brunson is one of my favorite players to watch. Brunson and Manu are the ones he references the most. I'm like,
I was going to say, Brunson's kind of replaced Harden as that example for a lot of the younger guys, that as young lefties, I should say.
Yeah.
They all look to Brunson as who to model their game after.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of similar physical attributes with them. Like, neither of them are lightning quick. Not saying he'll ever be Jalen Brunson because that's very unlikely, but like it's a lot of using craft and using your body more than like using a lightning first step type of thing. So what I'm getting at is the Warriors have really done their damage by creating turnovers on defense and taking advantage of the fact that they have 2 Hall of Fame caliber free safeties with Jimmy Butler and Draymond who blow things up. Where Brunson can be really dangerous for them is he's a low turnover guy. B, he might just be able to call his own number all game because they're not going to put Jimmy Butler on him. They're not going to put Draymond Green on him. They're probably going to have Podziemski on him and be more focused on trying to like, okay, what we don't want to happen is like Bridges and OG and like all these guys to get going and, hit threes and that sort of thing. So we'll live with Jalen Brunson. The problem is he can absolutely get 50 on you if he wants to. So to me, that's the question, because they haven't really faced that type of lead ball handler since they got Jimmy. And quite frankly, since they lost Wiggins, because pre-trade, they would have just had Wiggins guard Brunson. And he's just far more equipped for that type of matchup than anyone they have on the roster right now. Yeah.
The free safety aspect to what you're alluding to with Draymond and Jimmy is why I actually was, I mean, you just answered the question. Would they put one of them on Brunson if he's on pace for 50, on pace for like to have a good night, if they're cooking him? Because what teams have done a lot of this year is putting a smaller guy on Cat, and then you have your center guard Josh Hart, and then play free safety. And then you either, if Josh Hart kills you from 3, great, which Josh hasn't done that to any team really in the last 2 months. I'm looking at this matchup, a team that's already small, already has 2 elite off ball, similar to what Anunoby's been for the Knicks this year.
Exactly.
I'm wondering if, especially if they're going to put a wing on Cat, and my God, if they start Precious Achiuwa, it's like playing right into the game plan. If Cat's not there, of, well, we can just ignore that guy and then we'll just all load up at the nail and then help on Jalen Brunson. It's why the defensive matchups tonight are very, very fascinating to me.
I mean, they might. That's part of the reason, like Brunson's just kind of like, obviously you like to watch him. He's one of the better players in the league, period. But more than anything, since they've got Jimmy, they haven't gone against one of the premier point guards. Like, there's just no other way to put it. So I don't know. Like, the obvious adjustment would be like, do you try Jimmy on him to slow them down? Do you try some different things? They haven't really been put in a position where they've had to since this trade has gone down. So I'm curious to see how they guard it, because just like superficially looking at it, the way Brunson's able to exploit teams plays into the one most obvious weakness this group might have.
Yeah. I will say the Knicks also haven't gotten to the line a ton lately. I don't know if it's just like a drought in like effect in some free throws. Like sometimes it's a little bit like out of your control. Teams just aren't calling fouls on you lately. But the teams aren't also getting to the line against the Warriors over this stretch. These 2.5 weeks since the trade was made. Looking at cleaning the glass, 15.3 free throw rate, which would be 94th percentile for the league. Look, the profile that I spoke to earlier, that this is a Warriors team since the trade that isn't killing you with threes or 3 points made, which the Knicks have had a poor 3-point defense this year. But they are killing you on the boards, and the Knicks have been a very good defensive rebounding team this year. They're forcing a lot of turnovers. The Knicks do not turn the ball over, 4th in turnover percentage. It's why the styles make fights of it all tonight is actually very interesting. In years past, I'd say, oh, this team's going to rain threes on the Knicks tonight in their drop coverage. I'm a little interested to see like if this new version of the Warriors is actually a team the Knicks are more well equipped to beat, you know?
I will say the one thing they are still doing is taking threes.
Yes, the attempts are still up. Yeah.
Since they got Jimmy, they got to be 2nd or 3rd in total attempts. So they're certainly trying to generate threes. They just haven't made them. So,
so it's
maybe tonight's the night that, Moses Moody hates 8 threes.
I'll tell you, I read this stat the last pregame pod, but Fred Katz, actually, I should credit him with this stat. He has access to like all the media stats that we don't get access to. And there's like a shot quality luck factor that he introduced that I don't know if he might have put it in his most recent article, but the Knicks, not only are they like the least lucky, most unlucky team when it comes to 3-point variance this year, but the distance between them and the second most unlucky is like the same difference between 2nd and like 12th. It's like, yes,
on offense or defense?
On offense. So so what I'm saying is like what they're allowing on threes, like they don't allow a ton of threes this year. They're toward the top, like 6th or 7th in 3-point attempts against, but the quality against them is pretty high, and teams are just always having a good night against them. So Tibbs, I think in his head is saying, well, we're not allowing a ton, and the numbers are going to eventually revert back to normal. And we're not always going to be this unlucky, which goes to Friday night's game against Memphis. Knicks had this thrilling win. OG Anunoby hits a 3 with 4 seconds left to give him a lead. And the Grizzlies went 4 of 31 from 3 that night. So it's why if you're telling me the Warriors are still going to rain threes tonight, if the Knicks get a little bit of shot luck, then maybe this will actually be advantage Knicks. But I tell you, the trend we've seen this season, as I just said, is that teams, their get-right game is when they play the Knicks defense. So we'll see what happens. Before we get out of here, Sam, I know you have to run, but do you have any questions about the Knicks? Any thoughts about the Knicks before we get going?
Just for me, the big question with them is Mitchell Robinson. I know he just came back. I think he could actually be a problem for the Warriors. I don't know how much he's actually going to play or where he's at, but he just gives them a different look. And I know offensively, Cat at the 5 is impossible to guard, but like it does have defensive issues for the Knicks. So I'm curious to see what it looks like with the two of them together. What's going on with Mitchell Robinson? Is he back all the way? Is he still on a minutes limit? Like that sort of thing. Because that's a major piece that may change my feeling on the Knicks, but I just need to see it more.
Well, so you and me both, brother, that I would love to see what Mitch with more than a 15-minute restriction looks like. I would assume he's still on somewhat of a restriction. The Cat news that he's questionable with personal reasons, that if he doesn't play, I would assume Tibbs goes right to his medical team and yells, "I need Mitch for 20 tonight." Like at least so that way they could be somewhat competitive with their backup center. As far as the big picture of what Mitch can add, I think we've exhausted enough of what Cat can be at the 5. It's gangbusters offensively. It's nearly unstoppable, like you said. But when it's been stopped, it then leads to a defense that is very easy to score against, especially with how poorly Cat plays drop coverage. He's a very good defensive rebounder. So when he's backpedaling into oblivion, if the shot misses, he's right there, and you got a 7-footer like waiting for the rebound. It seems like it's very effective.
Is it fair to say it's specifically been an issue against the Celtics and maybe the Cavs?
And maybe the Thunder. And, the fact that the Lakers are now a 2 seed, it actually works out. The Knicks are not just 0-7 against the top 3 teams in the sport. If you just go by seeding, the top 4 seeds in both conferences, the Knicks are 0-8 against them. So the record actually just got worse. Yeah. But what the Timberwolves did last year with Gobert next to Towns, that I think is the model. And you've seen it in like the 30 minutes that Mitch has played so far, what it's like to have a center that plays at the level, that is able to contest shots without fouling, is just playing their drop so much better, is able to be more of a beast on the offensive glass as well. It hopefully can change some things. And I'd like to see what Cat looks like with someone in the dunker, because I think him in the high post actually allows for him to be more creative, as like with them being 5 out, him getting, or I guess 4.5 out, having someone that he could throw lobs to, because he's a really good passer.
Well, because I've always been of the standpoint, you got to play Cat at the 5. He's such a matchup nightmare. He stresses the defense out. But my thoughts, and particularly it was seeing the success Minnesota had last year, has really evolved to the perspective of you kind of want to be able to do both things with him. He gives you the versatility to play both big and small. There's not a lot of guys who can be effective both at the 5 and the 4. And you're kind of wasting his gifts if you don't have a roster that allows you to do both things. So there are some matchups where it makes more sense to go with the small ball, OG at the 4, like 4, Brunson, wings, and Cat. And there's some matchups where it might make more sense to put Mitch in there, go bigger. And because of the injury, we haven't really got to see it. So that's kind of the thing where it's, I'm curious to see it. I don't put too much stock into the numbers that the Knicks are 0-7 against the top teams right now. All it tells me is I need to see what they look like with Mitchell Robinson, because maybe they have a matchup issue without Mitchell Robinson there.
I'm glad you don't put a lot of stock in the Knicks being 0-7. I wish this fan base, myself potentially included, wouldn't to put much stock into it, because this is a very good team, 40-20, trending toward their second straight 50-win season, something they haven't done since the mid-90s. It's the convo I did enjoy that you and Alex had was about the Mark Jackson of it all, and how the Knicks, there's an outcry for Tibbs to be gone, saying he's our Mark Jackson. It's like, guys, Tibbs is the most prepared, hardworking coach in the sport. Just read Victory Machine and everything they were saying about Mark Jackson.
People forget, I didn't mention this, but people forget that Mark Jackson's own assistants tried to record him to show upper management how little prep he did. In general, I would not advise illegally recording people. It gets you fired. Right. In pretty much every instance. But like just the fact that it hit that level of like toxicity should let you know. Whereas like one thing you will never hear Tibbs of being accused of is being lazy and not working hard enough.
Right. Literally, they call the practice facility like Club Terrytown. That's where Tibbs lives. It's Club Terrytown, like in upstate New York. There was a joke 2 years ago, and I'll let you go after this. But there was a joke 2 years ago when the Knicks were like on some type of a winning streak, and he was in danger of getting being the 2 seed, and potentially he'd have to coach the All-Star game. And it's like, there's nobody that would be more miserable not having to leave the Knicks practice facility for the whole weekend than to have to go to Utah for an All-Star weekend instead. And thankfully the Knicks dropped to 3, and he was like, great, I can go stock up on microwave pizzas. So anyway, I look forward to this matchup. It's always good to see.
That's a good Tibbs impression, by the way.
Thank you. We have a whole roster of Knicks, of our faculty knows how to give a good Tibbs. 6 years gets you used to a guy. I'll tell you that much. You get a lot of experience learning how to give an impersonation.
We have all our Steve Kerrisms too.
Okay.
You do that over time. The whole this is the real NBA. Anytime they lose, this is the real NBA. So just stop it, Steve.
Yeah. Listen, we don't get to choose our coach, but we get to hopefully live with them. Sam, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you no luck in this matchup tonight. But with everything you guys are doing over at the Light Years Pod, I wish you luck, and a playback too. I wish you guys great luck. We've obviously utilized the service a lot over the years. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks know where they can find you and all that work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, Light Years, Warrior-centric pod. We go live pretty much after every game. We will be live tonight after the Warriors Knicks.
Okay.
And we might actually wait an hour or so post game for scheduling reasons tonight. So, if Knicks fans want to come hear what the other side has to say about tonight's game, I think it depends how it goes. You guys win, I'm sure.
It's usually how it goes. Yeah. We start with our monologue.
How much of an overreaction we have.
Go invade the other post game show, and then if it's a loss, I just don't want to look at my phone. Yeah, we get a lot of that after the game.
If Steph has another 50 at MSG, maybe you guys don't want to come, but you're always welcome. So that's it. Check out Light Years Pod if you can, and watch the game on playback as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Sam, as always, for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. I'll be back on Thursday to preview the Knicks' next matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers. There's a national TV game on TNT as well. So we'll get a good look at the Jimmy Butler version of the Warriors and then the Luka Doncic version of the Lakers this week. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will speak with you soon. Peace.